execution. Like who can I email? Like, who can I like get a review with, or get on set up a show or a tour? It did serve us well.
Today's conversation is with Suzie Zeldin of the indie band The Narrative. In this episode, we talk about their latest single, Little Boys Break Hearts, which is out now, how she met her longtime bandmate on CRAIGSLIST, how the band was fostered and supported by members of Taking Back Sunday and Fun, her experience playing with CARRABA of Dashboard Confessional, what it was like playing on Warped Tour, the evolution of her songwriting process, and how motherhood had an impact on her professional and creative life. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with Suzie, and I hope you enjoy. Yeah, so I thought, like I said before, I think it'd be like a good place to just start with like your musical background, like what got you into music in the first place.
Sure. Okay, so what got me into music? I don't think that there was one particular thing that got me into music necessarily. I think it was just a natural area that I gravitated towards ever since I was a kid. You know, like you're just kids. They do whatever they do naturally. You know, and so naturally, I was like singing and putting on performances and making my parents pay me money for tickets at a very young age. Had that entrepreneurial spirit like right from the get-go.
That's great.
Yeah. And so I just, it just kind of was the thing that made sense. Like when, you picked your electives in school, the thing that made sense was doing the music class. It was doing the musical theater program. It was just like the natural pull for me. Yeah, in terms of like what actually got me into music, like doing it in any kind of a real way, right?
Right, yeah.
That I guess was more just sort of came about also like just writing, from using it as an outlet to process emotions, I think at a pretty young age, like using first poetry, very cringy, terrible teenage poetry, and then, kind of like putting it to song even before I was really playing. And I don't know, it also was sort of just like a natural progression for me. But I think I started doing it once I like learned to pick up an instrument. I was like, you know what, I want to try and really like, I tried playing guitar.
Yeah.
That was fun. Still not my strongest
so guitar
instrument.
Was you tried guitar first, huh?
Well, no, actually, no. I mean, to be fair, so I started out as a kid playing piano. That was like the thing, right? Okay, so if I really think back to like how it truly, truly started in a real way, it probably is, I have these friends in Canada, right? They're like we were put in a crib together as children. Like that's how close we grew up, yeah. And my mom and their mom have been best friends forever. So when we were kids, I would go there all the time. I would spend my summers in Toronto and they would spend their summers in New York. We would like swap.
That's
and
cool.
it was really cool. And I would be at their house, and they're twins, and they're like 2 days younger than I am. And they would learn how to play like 4-hand piano parts because they like to, you know what I mean? It's like, what do you do with twins, right? You like make them do super cute stuff. And then it fucks with their identities forever. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed to curse in this?
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know the rules yet.
You can bleep that out.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, so they were taking lessons, and I would be at their house, and then they would teach me what they learned, and then I would try to play like both parts at the same time. Like that was my like goal, was to like learn both parts and then try to put them together. Yeah. And I don't think I was very good at it, but that's probably what really started me. And my parents realized that I like piano, so they got me a piano chair. So I really started learning on keys, and that's actually where that's the real story, probably where it started. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, right? Because it's like I feel like for me, I didn't realize until a couple of years ago what the actual seed was that was planted in my brain for music. Because I always thought like, well, I was interested in piano as a kid, and then my kid, same with me. My parents were like, oh, let's give him piano lessons, and I thought that was that, and well, really it was like, and then I thought, well, there's always a piano in my house, so I always would just pluck around at that, which is definitely a part of it. But I realized a big part for me was. My parents would always bring me to church on Sundays, and I remember being mesmerized by the choir and the piano player.
Totally.
And like even can hear like the influences of like the kind of church music in my writing even today, like chord progressions and stuff. Like, wow, that had a huge influence on me. So that's interesting.
Totally.
So you're friends as infants almost, or as very, very young children.
At the time we were like in this phase, I think we had to have been like, anywhere between like this was like a every summer thing forever. I mean,
That's
it was for
amazing.
years and years and years. Yeah, it was actually it's one of my like biggest highlights of my childhood was
Yeah.
that experience that I got to have all the time, was going up there and just spending a month with them and then having them down here spend it with. Shout out to Alana and Angela, badass twins in Toronto.
Nice.
So yeah, they're amazing. But
Cool.
yeah, I think it really started, a lot of it started there. I think the other thing too is like my grandma was really musical when I was little, and so
Hmm.
she taught me songs all the time. Both my
Oh,
grandmas
that's cool.
sang, but like my dad's mom, she really like loved to put me on a pedestal. Like she would like literally stand me on a chair in front of all of the all of like the people in her like building in her community, like sort of the elderly community, and she'd put me on the stool and teach me like Russian folk songs. I would learn them and then I would perform them with
Yeah.
her in front of people. And there were like tapes of me doing this from
Oh,
like
that's
I think
amazing.
there are like videos of me I think at 3 years old like standing on a
3.
chair,
Oh my God, I was gonna ask you how
Yeah.
old. That's amazing.
So yeah, Ilana, Angela, and I were hanging out, from from infancy, but the piano lessons probably didn't start until, activities start for kids
Gotcha.
like 6 years old, 9 years old, 10,
Yeah.
then you start to do stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
But that's how it kind of
Um,
got started.
Grandma. Very
Grandma.
cool. Yeah, just put me
Yeah.
on the pedestal. That's nice. So, okay, and then you said it was more of like a just a expression kind of thing. And so and it seems pretty clear in your music too that you're lyric first, or it feels like that to me at
Yeah.
least. Would you say that that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I
You
would
mentioned
I would
poetry, right?
say so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mentioned cringy poetry to be very accurate. Sometimes I find old things and I'm like, ooh,
Oh yeah. Well,
hard to be inside that head.
that's part of it. I
at
mean,
that
there's stuff I
age.
wrote 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, ugh. It's like,
Jesse
man.
told me I wrote something cringy last week, and I was like,
Yeah.
thanks. So I guess it never goes away.
Yeah.
Jesse's my bandmate, obviously, you know that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, like, yeah, it's lyrics first, I think, naturally, or at least a lot of like the earlier songs that I wrote were like lyric and music kind of popping into my head together.
Yeah,
Like
that's the
I
best.
find, yeah, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like you have more of a thread,
Yeah.
But it's also scary because then you like get sort of kind of like boxed into that original idea because you're like, I already have the lyric and I already have the melody, and maybe the lyric doesn't even make sense, but now I've got to work with it.
Yeah,
But
exactly. I get
but
married
that's
to stuff
usually
so
how-
hard.
yeah.
If I like it, like it's just, and that's been like the hardest thing for me as a songwriter is to know when to scrap something, and
Yeah.
like delete and
Oh.
to go backwards so that you can move forward even further. It's so hard for me to let go of a lyric that I think is good,
Yeah.
but I need to sometimes, and that like for me, like I think I've had a lot of growth recently, like by deleting things and starting over and building so I can get further. But
I'm
yeah,
a
you're
lyric
totally-
hoarder. I'm a lyric hoarder. I do like I have like terrible habits that I have to fix, but like one of the crazy things that I do that I really need to fix is sometimes when I write lyrics, I write so many words
Yeah.
and then I just keep pushing them down. Like a lot of times I write in like a note or in a doc. And then you go back through and it's just like 9 scrolling pages of just trash,
Wow.
like garbage. I won't go back
Right.
to it, but I think I might. I have this terrible habit of putting lyrics into a doc and then even when I rewrite them, I keep the old lyrics and sometimes I keep like the stream of conscience. And so it becomes just like this
Yeah.
extended 9-page document that's just trash. And
Yeah.
I always keep it in case I think I'm going to find something good in there. And I've never found anything good in there. It's never happened. And it
Never.
won't. It's never happened.
I do a
but
similar
I still
thing.
have it.
Yeah, I do a really similar thing. Although I don't know, it sounds like you're like running. I call it the running faucet. You just have to like run it until you get something good. It's like dirty water until you finally get
Yes.
something good. It sounds like you have a lot more water coming out for me. Like I think that's like for me that's such a useful thing to know as a songwriter. Just like let the crap come out. Like allow yourself to write bad stuff, especially stream of consciousness. Right? There's uncensor
Yeah.
yourself. Allow yourself to have something to shape and mold. So I don't know. I don't think
Right.
that's embarrassing or weird at all. I think that's like the way to do it for me at least.
Just generates a lot of crap. Like there's just so much that's not. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely a value to it. It's just that what I need to get, I think where you are is just I need to get to the part where I'm like, cool, and now I can delete like 70% of this or 80% of this and not feel sort of like bogged down by the chaos of how many useless things I've put on the page. But anyway, sorry, that was totally a tangent.
No, that's great. That's what I was hoping to get into, is this type of stuff.
Yeah. But so I do tend to write, like sometimes I'll get those moments where it's like a lyric and a melody together. A lot of times when I don't feel musically inspired, I just write that stream of conscience, like just whatever, right? Like I sit down and I'm like 10 minutes of anything.
Yeah.
At all. It's maybe going to be nothing, but more often than not, it is something. Like even if it's like a little something, it's like one phrase, one idea.
Yeah.
You know?
That's exactly what I do. I try to get in the habit of writing, object writing or whatever you want to call it, or stream of consciousness writing. I try and do it every day so that I have little nuggets, is what I call them. And so like if I do stumble upon a piece of music that I really like, what's really nice sometimes is I'll have like a verse melody that I really like, and I don't have a chorus melody yet, and I'm like, well, let me pull up a lyric that I found interesting last week or whatever, or go through I have like one note for like random interesting things.
That's what I do.
Yeah. So I have a single note for like random interesting lines. And then I have separate notes for like when I want to flesh out one of those ideas for any given song.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice when it works out where I'm just like, okay, I have this verse melody, it's great, but I don't have a chorus melody yet, but I have a chorus progression. So maybe, okay, this particular phrase that I wrote down that I still find interesting a week later feels like the music. Great, let's try and marry those things. And it's really, really, really beautiful when it works out, but it is.
I love that. I love that. I love the running note too. I have a very long note in my phone. It's getting a little bit unruly, I think, but otherwise the ideas are scattered, otherwise they're scattered in like too many places, and then I just lose them forever. I just found like today I was like, I'm packing to go to San Diego so soon. So I type in like San Diego because I'm like, I'm sure I've gone to San Diego recently because I've been traveling, and like I already have a pack list, and then San Diego pops up and it's like a song that I wrote in San Diego that I like forgot. It has chords, it has lyrics, it has like multiple parts, and I'm like, what the heck is this? Like where? And I would have because I didn't put it in the note. Like I put it in a different note with it. Anyways, one thing that we should not discuss probably are like all of my organizational habits around music.
Personally, I would love to go through all that because, but yeah,
they're bad.
Do you use
bad.
So this is the deepest we'll go in terms of like the specifics, but
like personal humiliation. Yes, let's go on.
No, do you have in terms of organization, I'm really like kind of obsessed with it, and I'll switch from app to app to see like what fits my vibe better. I currently use Milanote. I don't know if you know Milanote. What do you use?
Have you heard of Notes? It just comes on your phone like standard. I got another. Yeah, you heard that. That's the one. So I use that one for my just like running list of notes. Yeah. And then have you heard of Google Docs?
Yeah.
It's free. There's a really big company that runs that thing, so it's like pretty solid. I don't think it's gonna disappear anytime soon. Away. No, but yeah, right now, I do keep one long note just in my iPhone, like, just of everything. And then I have a drive, like a Google Drive, and I just put everything in there. I set a goal for myself this year to create like 100 pieces of writing.
Yeah.
Like just not like it has to be perfect, like it could be one sentence, but like I have to like it. It's got to have something in it. You know what I mean? Like rule. Just a little something. And so I just have a numbered list in there of things that I have written. I'm a little behind, but I'm going to get to 100 by the end of the year. So I still have 3 months to go. So
I like the rule that you have to like it. That's a good one.
Just a little bit, it just can't be nothing. There's got to be something in it, even if it's just a title. I'm even okay sometimes with being like, this is just a title right now. But more often it's 9 pages of stream of conscience.
Yeah, you can get a
hopefully it's
title.
okay.
That's a win, That's a win. I try and write every day, and if I get something that closely resembles a title, I'm excited. So
Yes.
yeah, that's great. All right, cool. So
can I also just for the record say that I've been saying stream of conscience, not knowing if I'm saying it correctly, but it's just stream of conscious, right?
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think now I'm questioning.
This is a good time.
It.
No,
Yeah.
I just was
Stream
like,
of
this feels wrong coming out.
Stream of
Yes, it's
conscience?
consciousness, but it's just stream of conscious.
Yeah.
So you can't use any of that where I sound like a dummy. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if you're editing dumminess out of this, then I would. For me, it would be a problem. We'd have to just leave the whole thing. But yeah, okay. So when did you start writing poetry? Like, was that like really early, or was that like teenage years?
Yeah, I think it was like I think it was. I've written songs for a really long time. Like I wrote plays.
Yeah.
I wrote like anything that I could as a kid.
Wow.
So I wrote songs from before I was 10. I was writing them and they were about ridiculous things. Like I wrote parodies. And Alana and Angela, the twins that I was talking about earlier, like they will be able to attest to the songs. They probably still remember most of them, but they were about like donuts and Halloween witches. And we even did like a parody to Michael Jackson at one point. Like I was just always, I don't know.
Creating.
Creating like from an early creating and monetizing. It was all very silly,
Right.
which, as it should be in your childhood. Right. And I think it just progressed. And so then when I got into the teenage, phase of, feeling crazy, obviously, all the feelings overwhelming. Yeah, then I really started to just write more written stuff. And then I started writing songs like without an instrument, though. I started writing songs just because I had the words, and so I would just sing the melodies because I didn't really have like I played piano, but then I moved, and we didn't really like follow up on getting another piano teacher, and so it kind of just like fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
Plus, aren't they supposed to teach you that stuff at school? I don't know, so. We didn't really follow up on it. And so I started just writing melodies to words without any instruments. Yeah. And then I like
How old were you then?
I think that was probably like 15, 16.
Okay.
And then, I met some friends that were doing some music stuff when I was like 17, and they would help put together some of the music stuff for me and record it. Like I think I'm sure I could find some like really, really early recordings that some friends that were a little bit older than me and a little bit more technologically inclined at the time like helped me put some of those ideas down.
Was there like a band or any organized group of people before the narrative for you? I don't know about it if that's the case.
Yeah, there wasn't really. No, the narrative was really my first actual like band project. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so like talk about how you met Jesse, your bandmate.
Yeah. Okay. So Jesse and I are from the same town in Belmore, New York, which is on Long Island. And we went to the same schools. And we lived only about a 5-minute. Yeah, we lived about a 5-minute drive from each other. Belmore is like two peninsulas next to each other, and then there's like, so we were both in the south part of it, and on the two separate little peninsulas. Like, yeah, if there was a bridge, it would be a lot faster to get to his house, but you got to go up and around. And but we met. Strangely enough, we didn't meet through school, even though we had mutual friends and all that stuff. We met on CRAIGSLIST.
Yeah. Now, I knew that part, which is why it surprised me that you guys actually like went to the same school and stuff.
Yeah, it was so weird. I remember like we met. I actually found my response to Jesse's CRAIGSLIST post. Yeah. And back then when I wrote a smiley face, I used a lowercase o for the nose. It just was one of those things that I did in my early 20s. And
the things we regret.
Oh, I don't regret that. I think I'm going to bring it back. Good. But yeah, so yeah, we met on CRAIGSLIST. I was like, I was started to do solo stuff. Actually, okay, fine. So yes, there was no band before there was the narrative, but there
Yeah.
was Suzie solo stuff, which
Is that
was
what it was called, your project?
yeah, it was just Suzie Zeldin. There's still 4, really like, beginnery songs that exist out there in the world, and it's just part of my history. But
Cool.
that's what came before. And actually, I started writing those songs when I was a senior at NYU.
Hmm.
Or maybe earlier than that, maybe my junior year at NYU. So I started writing. Yeah, I was writing a lot of music when I was in college already. Like I got my first guitar when I was 18, and I moved. I got to my college dorm, and I went out and got a guitar. Like as you do.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I got my acoustic, got my acoustic guitar. My big Martin acoustic was way too big for me. The strings were too far off the fretboard. I had no idea that was a thing that you get to fix, etc.
Yep.
Really amateur stuff. Yeah.
Same. I was in my first band. And I was a pianist, but I was like, oh, I want to pick up guitar. And the first thing I did was buy an acoustic guitar. It was not a Martin. It was a terrible knockoff or something. And the action was terrible. So I just thought I was like, well, guitar is not meant for me. Like I gave up so easily. And
exactly.
I regret that, but yes, continue.
But same, yeah. So I got my acoustic guitar, and then and I was playing keys still. Even my like college boyfriend and I worked on like music together. So it was just like it was really cute.
It's cute.
And yeah, I did that, and then eventually I wrote some songs, and a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you should show these songs to like my boyfriend, who was in like a band on Long Island at the time." I don't know if I should be like name droppy right now, or if I should like avoid being name droppy because like I don't want to be cringy,
Yeah.
But anyways, my friend, my good friend Laura, who I'm still friends with to this day, introduced me to Will Noon, who is drummer and played in Breaking Pangea and Stray Light Run, and then eventually went on to play in Fun, and then eventually married Brian and I at our wedding. He officiated our wedding. And a good friend of mine, and John, who played in Taking Back Sunday and then Stray Light Run. So I started working on my first songs with those guys, and they actually introduced me to Brian, and then Brian helped me record my vocals, and so those were the first songs that I ever released. And then when I had those songs out. Yeah, isn't that crazy? It was Stray Light Run.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it was Stray Light Run. That's exactly what it was. It was when Will was that was Will's next project. So that's how we met, and that's what I had out, on like MySpace back in the day, and that's what I when I was like, oh, but I don't want to do this by myself. Like everyone else, they're all in real bands, like doing real stuff, and I was like, I just want to, I want to do something too, but I don't want to do it alone. I've always been better as a teammate than like a solo person always.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up on Craigslist of all places. Just because, you do everything on Craigslist. You get your couch on Craigslist. You get your nightstand on Craigslist. You get your bandmates on Craigslist. All these things happen. But anyways, everyone on Craigslist is very terrible, mostly. But I met Jesse, and we didn't realize that we were both from the same town. Until we each thought that we had told the other person where we were from.
Wow.
Because we thought, because we kept coming up on these things that were like common things, and we're like, does she know? Did I tell her? Did she? And then it kind of clicked. I think we were eating pizza or something, and we were just like, wait.
So you guys met in person multiple times before you realized that you guys were from the same school?
Like a few times, yeah. I think a few times. He might revise that story. This is my memory, but at the very least, we certainly didn't know right away. And it took us a minute to figure out that we really were all from the same place. So yeah, that's how we met. Yeah. And he was playing guitar at the time in some random New York projects too, trying to figure out where he belonged, because he wanted to play music and I wanted to play music, and
well, okay, so you guys meet, and so did you guys put anything out before the EP, before Just Say Yes?
We put out a demo of a song called End All that is on our self-titled. So it didn't
Oh,
make it to the EP, but it ended up making
that's
it to the
cool.
full length,
I
ironically
love that.
enough. So
As a big
yeah,
fan
there's
of
a
like, so, because when I met you, you guys were working, when I started working with Brian with my band,
yes,
that's when I met you. You guys were recording
yes.
or finishing up the self-titled, like, and then my band stepped in to record our EP. So there was some overlap there. That's why we met you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that record just because I listened to it all the time because I was just like, oh, this is great. Brian, for those of you that don't know, Brian Russell, that's Susie's husband, who's a
He is my
producer.
wife.
Yeah, that's
He
true.
can be my wife. It's fine.
I misspoke. Um, so he's a fantastic producer who produced all of the narrative stuff, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
everything.
And he's produced almost everything that I've put out too. And so yeah, my band was recording with Brian, and I was just like, oh, I love his stuff. So I was, in anticipation of my own band's work that we were working on with Brian, I was just absorbing all the stuff that he's worked on. When you guys finished the self-titled record, I was just like, that's such a huge part of that time in my life because I would listen to it all the time. It's cool to
That's
learn as a
awesome.
fan like that. Those were demos before the EP. It's really cool.
The self-titled, yeah.
Yeah.
There were some demos. A few of those were demos, but
Which
the
one? Do you remember which
EP.
ones?
Actually, I think it was just, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was just End All, just that one.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it was just
Cool.
that one. We released it under January Window, which was our original band name, which was like
I
a
didn't know that either.
Sylvia Plath reference, like to like a Sylvia
Sounds
Plath.
like
So
Sylvia Plath.
or being like a English lit major, at
Yeah.
NYU. It's like trying to find all of my band names from poems.
Yep.
So yeah, and then we realized that we didn't like that name very much. Like it didn't stick. So we changed it. But yeah, that was the first thing that we did together, and then the EP with Brian, and the 6-song EP, Just Say Yes, and then the self-titled after that.
Yeah, like looking, kind of just prepping before this conversation, just like going to your Spotify and just re-listening to stuff for the first time in a while. It's like, oh man, it's so great. And it's made, so
Did you give it a follow? Did you give it a follow? Because you have to follow it.
I don't know that I follow you on Spotify.
You better follow
I will if I don't. But it's Eyes Closed, right? Eyes Closed is it's got over 1 million plays. It's like amazing. It's like your most popular song on Spotify.
Yeah, it's got like 4 million on like YouTube.
Yeah, amazing. That's
for like, and who know? And that you want to hear? So here's some fun, like early fanfare stuff. That was the first song that Jesse and I ever really worked on together.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was like in my apartment on 83rd in York, and he was like, we were playing that song, and we're just like, end it here, like end it on this, like just let it go and like let it ring out, and then that's just the end of the song. And like I remember like him being like, oh my god, like is this line, like there's this line in the song like, oh my god, you're beautiful, and he's like, is this like like and I was like, no, it's not, it's like it's amazing, it's like amazing. There's no bigger fan of Jesse's writing than me. Like I am a huge fan. He's so talented. He's so good.
He really is.
But yeah, we left it, and that like little line like connects with so many people. Like I see people referencing that line all the time. Like this moment in this song, it's just the like, and yeah, it's probably a little cringy, but like but it's like the good kind,
Yeah, that's great.
But that was the first song we worked on. It was like total sleeper. Like who knew? Like this like chill acoustic song was going to take on a life of its own and just do its thing, This was all pre-streaming too. Like I mean, this was 2011, right? So like there wasn't even streaming at that time. So
no. Well, and the EP came out earlier than that, right? So like that was like 2008 or something, right? So yeah, I think
2009,
Yeah, that's like a rarity for sure. That's a big deal for a band in that era.
Yeah,
it was. To have any type of traction, like it's a totally different game than it is now.
I know, it's
crazy.
Yeah.
So okay, you guys put together the EP. Eyes Closed has some success. Like what happens after that? So obviously you want to record more stuff. You decide to was it obvious? Oh, we want to do a full length this time instead of another EP.
Yeah, I think that was obvious. At that time too, things had changed. So when we first started, it was me and Jesse
Yeah.
together, the two of us. And then when we got into recording the EP, we were introduced to Charlie, who played drums,
Yeah.
Charlie Syke. And then, the three of us became like this hilarious little unit, this little band unit. Um, and yeah, I think it was a very natural progression. We were playing and practicing all the time. So, we'd be bringing songs to each other all the time. And between Jesse writing songs and me writing songs, there was enough material to start to be like, we
Yeah.
have like 9 or 10 songs. Like that's
Yeah.
starting to sound like a record,
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
always
So
exciting.
it made sense to do like the self-titled as a full
Yeah.
album. And I really like that record still.
It holds up for sure. I mean, listening to it for the first time in a while, I just absolutely love it. And because I'm a big fan of Brian's production, of course, too. I just like,
Mhm.
and especially having worked with him for so long now, like I can recognize
Yeah.
his tendencies and like,
Yeah. For
it's
sure.
really really fun to listen to. It's
Mhm.
just it's good all around. Did you guys like because my second band Avalon Landing, we had two vocalists as well, two lead singers. Like was that like
Mm.
how did you balance that dynamic? Was it difficult or was it just natural and easy? Like you just kind of let it flow? Or because the problem we would run into sometimes is like, well, we want to make sure it's even. We want to make sure like this single, that single. Like, did you guys ever think about that or anything like that? No? Good.
No, not really. For us, the way that it sort of happened was mostly around like who brought what song to the table. And
Yeah.
usually like when one of us brought a song to the table, it's because we were writing it on our own and we were singing it on our own.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other person would come in and collaborate on it. And I have I don't have like a I don't know. I never really had an ego around like needing
Yeah.
anything to be a certain way,
Yeah.
So I'm a pretty adaptable person, I think, in general. It's like one of my core values as a human.
Yeah.
Just be adaptable. Your life will be easier.
Yeah, that's a
So
good one.
I was always comfortable with whatever, kind of whatever happened. And I also had at the time, I had this sort of, false narrative, I would say, that I was like not a prolific writer. I think I was, it was early stages of being creative, and I was also a doer. Like I mentioned that like entrepreneurial spirit from my
Yeah.
early age, and so I would get caught up in the taskiness of being in a band more so than I was getting
Administrative
caught up in the
stuff.
creative. Yeah, totally. So it was just about, I think I told myself, well, I write when I'm inspired, and I'm only inspired in the afternoons every third Tuesday in the month of September, and I can't do anything else,
Yeah.
And so I feel I did what was easy for me, which is like execution. Like who can I email? Like who can I like get
Yeah.
a review with,
Well,
or
that
get
served
on
you
a
guys
set up a
well.
show or a tour. It did serve us well. It definitely put, it really made me sort of view myself though differently than I view myself now, with a lot more perspective and time and growth. But I didn't write that much. I really didn't. I had all
Yeah.
the time in the world. And I didn't use it that way. I used it for
Oh,
other
yeah.
stuff, and it was great. Writing is. There are different parts of being in a band, right? So at that time, I did way more of the other stuff,
Yeah.
And so Jesse had more songs because he was doing more writing, and that felt fine to me
Yeah.
at the time.
Well,
Yeah.
every successful band definitely needs that like entrepreneurial spirit.
Someone's
Like
gotta do it, yeah.
no band that unless you stumble up, like you get lucky and you stumble upon a manager that just kills it for you. It's very very hard, especially nowadays. You really need that entrepreneurial spirit. I think most bands in general nowadays do it. Like I think most bands, young bands now, just they know like there's a kind of a path that you can follow. It's just like, okay, we just need these metrics and like we just need to make sure we go out and
Right.
do it. But it was I don't think it was as clear back then. It was
No.
you really had to go out and do it, and you had to understand that you had to go out and do it. Like It was this weird in-between time where, like, you know, it's not like the 90s where you get a record deal and you're made, you know? It's this in-between where, like, you really have to put the work in. And so, like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that you guys found success with your, like, go-getter attitude, because you really need that. You know?
Yeah. It was fun. I really
interesting
enjoyed that.
Because, like, I think we have a similar kind of arc in terms of our evolution as writers, because I also had this false narrative in my head that I just wasn't a prolific writer. I could never, you know, I would maybe write, like, you know, 10 to 12 songs a year, maybe 20 at the best, but like
that's great.
Well, you know, especially with my first band, like, being the main writer, like, only one writing the lyrics, you know, it probably wasn't enough. It certainly wasn't. And then, you know, I got older and I started hearing stories about, like, you know, I think, so being in Vegas for my second band, like, hearing Dan Reynolds from Imagine Dragons, how he wrote like 100 songs for the first record. And I'm like, oh, that's probably what I should be doing. 'Cause, like, it's hard to write a hit song. Like, and your odds are going to go down dramatically if you only write 10 songs a year or 20 songs a year, right? So I had a similar thing with that for sure.
Yeah.
So did you guys, is there like a moment where things kind of started taking off for you? I know, so you guys got to play Warped Tour, you got to, you kind of hit that next level. Like, when did that happen?
You know, I wish that we could have known that we had hit a next level at the time, and stopped worrying about all the crap that we were worrying about, probably all the dumb stuff that we were arguing about. But that's just life in a band, I think.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if people understand that, like, bands are like being in relationships with multiple people at the same time.
Polygamy.
But, like, all of the good stuff sometimes, like, somehow there's nothing romantic about it. Like, all of the sexy stuff doesn't exist. It's just like the rest of the dynamics. What
all the headaches of a standard relationship.
Yeah, exactly, right. And none of the fun. No, the fun parts are just musical instead. But
yes.
Yeah, I think what happened for us was interesting. We just got super lucky, right? Like, we started out and we put out the EP, and we had just a handful of friends and people that, like, helped us out. Like, you know, Will was like, hey, you know, I know someone at the time, you know, it's Chorus FM now, but at the time it was like Absolute Punk, you know, and they're like, you know, they connected us with someone over there, and he's like, hey, I know you guys are recording. Will was like, had offered to, like, you know, sort of manage us, like, kind of, I don't know if I'm trying to remember how official or unofficial it was. I don't think we ever signed anything, you know, and I don't think he was really managing artists that much at that time, but he was doing us a favor. It was just a solid, you know, he'd been in bands for years, and he was my friend, and, you know, he liked our music and genuinely believed in us. And so he helped connect us with some people. And we just got lucky that, you know, some of the folks at Absolute Punk really liked it. And then they would post. We just got to post. Anytime we did something, someone was like, boop, the narrative, boop, the narrative. And it's like,
Punk.
No idea. Like, they were a big deal. You know, like, it was a big deal. Like, thank you, Jason Tate. Like, you know, still shout out to you. Like, totally cool dude. And then all the people that wrote about it, like, constantly. So there was just a really cool, community of these writers that allowed us in. They, like, took us in. We were like their indie darling baby band. It was so lovely, you know? And we were sort of peripheral to most of the music that was happening on that particular site, but that site had such an intense, like, community around it that was so cool.
It really mattered. It had an impact.
It mattered.
Sure.
Yeah, it totally did. So, like, you know, that was kind of I think that was what kind of got the ball rolling. Yeah. And then it got us, you know, a booking agent, and then a subsequent booking agent.
Right.
And that was really just, I think, those little connections, you know, with someone that, honestly, like, someone that genuinely cared. Like, it was just, if more people just did things because they genuinely cared and just genuinely wanted to help other people, like, probably more good things would be happening, you know? But that's all that was. Like, no one was making a ton of money on us. No one was like, this is a great this indie band is going to be
This
the
is an
thing, you know,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, we're gonna put all the money into this. Like, it wasn't like that. It was just like, we like your music, and that's all that we're worried about right now. So we're just gonna help share it. That
Amazing.
was it.
Yeah.
That was all that happened. And that's, I think, really what got it going. I mean, I think because that happened when we got the full length together and we put the full length out, at that point, my friend Mike Dubin stepped in, who was also like a beloved human in that sort of scene. We were still quite adjacent to that scene, but that record was, a little more pop rock, kind of
Right.
had a little bit more of that, like, sort of like upbeat energy for us, like,
Yeah.
still very chill, still
Yeah.
definitely the softest band on all of Warped Tour, probably possibly ever, still to this
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Maybe. Maybe.
So fun. But yeah, and so then, like, having had that, like, interest, there was interest in that we were making a record, and then interest in what was going to happen, and we were able to get, I think, on Warped Tour to support that record, because that came out. And then we got on Warped Tour not too long after that. So yeah.
Oh, you did 2 years of Warped?
Just one.
Oh, just the
We
one.
did
Okay.
just one year. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What? So
But it was just.
would you say, like, in terms of the narrative? I mean, I know the Warped Tours are grueling, so I hesitate to say it's a highlight, but it is a highlight for any band to get on a tour like that. So what was that like? Being grueling and all. So you guys had like a tour bus, or did you guys do a van, or what'd you do?
So we did a van for like the first 5 to 6 days or something before we could share a bus, because we're small, like, we did Warped Tour with basically 5 people. It was me, Jesse. At that time, our friend Jay was playing drums. Our booking agent, Eva at Feta Booking, had Alexa, who's lovely, Alexa Fuentes, and she came with us as our, like, merch person. And then Brian hopped on and just shared my bunk with me, which was very uncomfortable. It's a very small bunk. I don't recommend sharing a bunk with anybody.
Yes.
But we actually, Warped Tour, they do their best to help the smaller bands, and they would, kind of do like a like, who needs a bus, and like, how many people are on this bus, and can we get these people to share this bus? You know what I mean? So we got connected with a band from Canada that we then shared a bus with for Warped Tour, and that was very fun.
Yeah. Did you do the whole leg? Did you do the whole summer?
We did a month of it. We did 1 month.
Okay.
Like 4 weeks.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
Right, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what happens after Warped Tour? You guys at some point, the second record, I mean, you guys start recording.
We started recording
Golden Silence,
our
like,
next record.
when? Like 2012?
2012, yeah. And we did Warped Tour in 2011.
Yeah.
So we basically came off Warped Tour, and we were writing, kind of leading up to it. At that point, Charlie actually had left the band because he didn't want to tour, and so he didn't want to do Warped Tour. It was not his scene or his thing, really. And so we were like, we were kind of doing. It's not for everyone. I mean, listen.
No, it's not.
It's your 7 a.m.
It was always a concern for me.
Your overnight drives.
Yeah, like, I was like, I mean, I love music and I like performing, but, like, I don't know, tour. I've always been a homebody. Like, traveling is always like, in that way. Traveling like that has never, like, touring was never my favorite. So I understand it's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone. I loved it, and I would probably do it again if the right circumstances came about. But but yeah, so we did Warped Tour, and then we came back, and if I'm not mistaken, because I didn't study my own history for this one, and my memory is getting greater and greater as time goes on. We got off of that, and I think I'm trying to remember if we did the Isley tour after that, or if it was was it just leading up to it? No, I think it must have. No, it had to have been after. That's right.
That tour, that was fun.
Yeah, so I think we actually did that. If I'm not mistaken, after Warped, because it was just Jesse and I. We did it acoustic, like, it was just a piano and keys. But after that, we started working on the next full length, and we did record a handful of acoustic songs and a few alternate versions of things too, sort of in the interim. So we released a record called B-Sides and C-Sides.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so that came next, and we sort of were like, here's a record, buy it, and help us fund our next record, which we are currently making in this fantastic barn in the middle of upstate New York that we rented before Airbnb was a thing. So, like, found, like, you know, God, the logistics to make this happen were just so much more complicated and honestly a lot less expensive than they would have been now, you know, to like rent something like that. Forget it. Like, so we just did a whole impromptu like studio in this barn. It was really fun.
That's Brian's thing.
That was what came next.
Set up a studio anywhere.
Set it up where, that he does like to bring cables from one place to another. That man.
It's true.
So,
it's true.
So we did that. That was next, and we recorded that whole record in a barn, most of it, and then we did overdubs for a really long time. Around this, right before we actually went and did that, I started working on like a totally unrelated business because I was doing a good amount of touring where now I was starting to like run out of money and need to be able to pay for stuff, and I don't like to feel like that for very long. So so I ended up getting a job, and then that turned into me owning part of that company, and that's still a company that I own now, and growing it. And so a lot of my energy went between 2012 and 2016. There was a lot of energy that was like sort of like put into that business. And that's also the time that I ended up in Twin Forks, right? It was like in that period of time. So like we made that full length record. And as we were making the full length record, you know, I got connected with CARRABA through my friend Mike Dubin. And he was working actually at the time on like a covers record. And he did like a cover of, it was like a Newfound Glory cover, and they did, I think, a Dashboard cover, and they released like a split 7-inch. And so I ended up singing on like backgrounds on all that stuff. You can go find it on YouTube.
Yeah. Nice.
Just on the Dashboard stuff. Yeah. Oh, it's fun. I just listened back to it the other day, actually. It was a really fun, nostalgic moment for me. But I should like post about that. Anyways, whatever. So I ended up meeting Chris and, you know, coming and recording stuff like first remotely, you know, sending files back and forth to like add to his covers record, and then eventually like coming down to Florida and playing in Twin Forks, you know, and recording with that project. And so that was like 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of what happened next. It was like we recorded our full length, but it wasn't done. We went down the rabbit hole of like wanting orchestral arrangements and like really like, you know, we dream big. When we dream all the way big, and we're not, you know, it's like I think we got caught up in that like good, cheap, fast, like pick two situation where it was like, it's going to be good and it's going to be cheap, like not actually cheap, but like in context for like what it should cost to like record bass clarinet and cello and an entire string quartet and a this and a that, like all the stuff that we did on that full length on Golden Silence, and have someone arranging it. Like it was very cheap, done very cheap, but it took forever.
It's time or money. It's one of we're compromising somewhere.
And had I known at that time in my life that the value of time is far greater than the value of money, I would have definitely flipped that, put that record out in 2013 and done something else. But instead, we just did that for 4 years.
I know,
the things you look back on and you're like, but.
Yep. I mean, that's like,
what happened.
I think that killed both of my bands. Time. Like we just, it's just, especially nowadays, everybody kind of gets it. You know, everybody puts out singles now. It's all about just consistently putting out content. And like, we put out my second band, Avalon Landing, we put out a full length album, and then it was years before we put anything out after that, you know? So it's like, that's what makes it so hard for a band. But you guys, like, that's what's interesting about your story is like you guys like kind of survived that like in an interesting way. So, there's 4 years between when you start the record and when it does come out.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, so you're with Twin Forks,
Mm-hmm.
and you're performing there. So now,
Yes.
like we had talked about too, like you like toured around with them, right? Like what you did some interesting stuff with them, right?
I got to do a lot of fun stuff with Twin Forks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really great. And yeah, I mean, kudos to Chris for being like, I choose you and I believe in you. To learn this new instrument that you don't play,
Yeah.
and here's a mandolin, and here's 3 months to learn how to play these songs, and come on out, and
That's incredible.
that was like an actual dream, like a total dream come true. Like having been a Dashboard fan, like a
Yeah.
huge Dashboard fan, right from the beginning, from those very first EPs. Like it was just an absolute like life highlight to get to know Chris and to be in a band with him and to get to do the kind of travel that we did. So we did the South by Southwest, like, stuff the way that you do when you're a real band and you get the passes and you don't play across the highway, at someone's like
That's what
barbecue.
my bands did, okay.
That's what we did too. I mean,
I
this is what I wanted to, how do I know from doing it?
Exactly.
But like, this time we got the passes. So, we did like the South by Southwest stuff. We did like a huge festival circuit in Europe. We played to thousands of people at a time. It was insane. Like, it was crazy. It was definitely one of those moments where you're like, I'm like shaking a timbre, like a little shaker. It's like the shape of an orange. And I'm just like, I don't belong here. Do I belong here? I don't think I belong here. But I was there. So yeah, we did the festival circuits. I realized now how much better it is to be at catering at a festival than it is to be anywhere else at a festival. Catering is always amazing. And we did Australia. We played in London. We played across the U.S. Really, it was just fantastic. And then, I got to do all the things. Small shows,
Amazing.
big shows, you name it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Everything but an arena, basically.
That's crazy. That's amazing. So, okay,
Yeah.
and so that happens before 2006. So the album, the second album, Golden Silence, that actually does come out 2016. So that's after all the Twin Forks stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's after the Twin Forks stuff. It's after Brian and I got married. So like, 2014. We toured around so much in 2013 with Twin Forks. And then we came home in 2015 or in 2014, and I got married, and I decided to stay and work on my business for a while longer because it was really needing some support. At that point, I owned quite a bit of it. And so it was the thing that was paying me, like, with regularity. And so I needed to adult for a little while.
Yeah, that's always the balance, right? That's basically the artist's struggle, is balancing between what you want to do and what pays the bills, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you guys wrap up Golden Silence. You guys put that out in 2016.
Yeah.
What happens from there?
Children. I produced a lot of things. None of them were musical. Actually, they still might be musical. Time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. But yeah, we had kids. Yeah, and I think there's, that was we played some, so I should say too, like I moved to Nashville after that record came out in 2016. I was already living in Nashville. I moved to Nashville in like 2015 or 16, really close to when that record came out. And Jesse moved around a year and a half later. So we both ended up out here together, which is good. And I started doing some like songwriting stuff in the songwriting community here. And like, I tried my, hand at the co-writing thing. And I learned that I'm actually not I'm only inspired once every third Tuesday in the month of
Right.
September when the sun is in Virgo or some crap, right? Like
Yeah.
it was
Right.
actually just that I wasn't exercising the muscle because I was distracting myself. I was allowing myself to do the things that came so much more easily to me, which
Yeah.
was just, like sort of the stuff we talked about before. So
Yeah. Right.
the co-writing was awesome because I learned that I could write good songs, bad songs, really any kind of songs. It was like more like I went for a run and today I had a bad run and the next time I had a good run, and
Yeah.
learning that it was so much more about the discipline for me. I
Yeah.
think that all people are different and different people have different approaches, and I respect that. For me, I learned that really the more disciplined I am in my practice, the more
Yeah.
successful I am with my results. And
Yeah.
that's what Nashville taught me. It was like to sort of elevated the bar, and taught me that you can throw out a song. You
Right.
can be like,
It's
this one was crap, this one was bad,
right. Exactly. Nashville's like one of the few
all the way
places where it's
through.
like it's a legitimate job to be a songwriter. So you have to
Yeah,
show up like a
exactly.
professional, right? It's like
Yeah,
again for me, it's a similar arc, right? I had to, because I was like, oh wait, people write 100 songs to just put one
how do
10
they
song
do
album
that?
together. How do they? Yeah, I guess they have to show up every day and write, even when they don't feel like it. And that was like a hard thing for me to get over. So yeah, it's like
Yeah,
such an important lesson as a songwriter. For most, I think for most people, it would be the way to go. You're right. I think there are some people it's just like follow the muse and write whenever you write, and you're an all-star, and it's just like everything you write's gold.
right.
Great, good for you.
Totally.
um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
thing. I had this like, did you ever feel like in your early days of writing that songs were precious?
Oh,
Like that,
I
like you would
still
write
do.
something and like,
I'm too precious. That's still a problem. That's like I
yeah,
throwing away songs is really important. Just like we were talking about, like deleting, being able to delete a line that you're married to. It's just as important to be able to do
totally.
that with a whole song. Um,
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Nashville taught me that you didn't need to, like, that not everything that I wrote is good. It's a hard
yeah,
lesson to
exactly.
learn.
It really
Um,
is.
because, you walk in and you're like, well, these are my feelings. Or the lot, because I mean, it also depends like what you're writing for and what,
Yeah,
what
that's
drives
true.
you
That's true.
to write. Like for me, it really was, I've only ever written really outside of that experience of being like, well, I'm showing up to do co-writes, and like that was a different thing. But prior to that, I only wrote for myself to process things, and then you need that somehow. It only makes sense if other people hear it. Just sort of feels like you need someone else to know that in order to
Oh
process
yeah,
it,
for
and
sure. Yeah,
whatever,
you need multiple. You need at least two brains on it to understand
something,
if
yeah,
you're on the right track. That's like the
yeah.
most
So
important thing with co-writing.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it didn't occur to me that, I think I also was lucky in that I was so supported by Brian and by like Jesse and Charlie. Like
Hmm.
whenever I wrote something, like they were like, this is good. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it wasn't like that, they were really supportive of everything that I wrote. I mean, there's
Yeah.
maybe some stuff they like better than other things, but the general vibe was like, you're good.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job,
Right.
So later learning that like not every song has to turn into something necessarily. I mean, I think I do still struggle with that a little bit because I am kind
Yeah.
of like, but this is for me, it's this.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it artistic or a
but yeah,
product? That's the hard. It's a lot easier when it's a product. To like, it's just when you're co-writing, it feels like okay, this is something we're trying essentially to sell, and it's a lot easier to assess is
yeah,
this sellable, like. It's when
yeah.
it is our
But
artistic, it's like I get precious and I'm just like, I don't care if this isn't good. I still like it for me and I still want to release it. I don't know. I still
yeah,
struggle with
yeah,
that myself.
totally. I do. I don't think I care about the sellable part. This is the problem for me. I think that's what
Exactly.
I learned in the Nashville, like, sort of doing it thing where I didn't I either didn't find there were some people actually that I really did like writing with, and I think that had
Hmm.
we continued to write together, but then I had kids, so the whole kids thing,
Hmm. Hmm.
that probably would have been, we probably could come back together and write now, and it would be good. But there were only a handful of people. There was a lot of stuff where
Yeah.
we tried our hand at one time, and we didn't really ever write together again. And I just didn't love. I didn't love co-writing because I felt like there was in some of the rooms that I was in, and I think it's the less like experienced rooms, the less, kind of people that really know the industry and understand like how to hit something authentic even while you're trying to
Uh-huh.
create a
Yeah.
product, like it was a lot of just
Magic.
trying to create product. It was just
Yeah.
a lot of trying to create product. And that to me was so inauthentic that I
Yeah.
just couldn't do it. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like the worst one. I would be like, you know what? I'm just not feeling this. So I'm out.
Yeah, well, you touched on something that's like really important. I think it's like because you're right. I think there is a happy balance between like even if you're trying to create a product, like you can still do it genuinely, right? And that is
Totally. Yeah.
authenticity is like the key to especially nowadays. Like everybody's got an Instagram, everybody's trying to build a public profile, and I think the people
Right.
that generally succeed, at least long term, are the ones that come off as authentic. And I think it's definitely clear in the songwriting world too. It's like unless like pop songs are pop songs, like there's some pop songs are just so good it doesn't even matter if it's authentic or not. Just like they're so well crafted. But I do think
Right.
if you can kind of take the pop craft and put in some truth, like authentic truth, I think that's what the real
Yeah.
magic. But it is hard. It's very
Exactly.
hard.
It's hard, and I think it comes with a lot of experience and a lot of patience and really like exercising the muscle every day. And
Yeah.
I don't think that I was really ready for that at the time, or maybe I didn't really understand it. But it was really cool to learn that I could write a lot of stuff. I just didn't
Yeah.
like a lot of the stuff that I was writing. That was my big problem. I was just not like really enjoying what was coming out of it because I
Yeah.
mean, there were a lot of conversations about writing things that had included trucks and whiskey. And I was like, this doesn't feel authentic to me. I don't care about
No.
trucks and whiskey.
Yeah.
I am an East Coast girl.
Yeah.
I would rather write about the city. I'd rather write about the coast, the beach, like things that make
Right.
sense to me, relationships. And a lot of it felt like I'm looking for the repeatable hook. I'm looking for the title that catches your attention. And I'm like,
Yep.
and to me, I couldn't be like, and also it's authentic.
Yeah, it's
You know what I
it's
mean?
so
I just
hard.
couldn't,
It's so
I
hard.
couldn't add that last. I
Yeah.
was like, it either is just fabricated and it checks the box, or it's authentic, and those two things do not get married, but they can,
Yeah.
and that's the hardest part, and that
Yeah.
was the part that I don't think that I got to,
Yeah.
honestly,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
in that world, yeah.
But yeah, you learned. It's just like again similar. I went out to LA and did a couple co-writes, and like for some of it was for sync, a lot of it was for sync. So it's like it really is a product, and it's like
Yeah.
you're not really caring too much about like if the lyrics are honestly any good. It's like you have to try and write a song in a few hours and record the whole thing too.
Right.
And like I didn't think I would be capable of that, and it turns out like if you're it's like a life in general. If you're forced into certain situations that you're uncomfortable with, a lot of the times it's good for you. And so you do
Yeah.
learn like, oh, I'm capable of these things. Maybe it's not necessarily what I want to do, but it's good to
Right.
know that I have it in my pocket. I'm capable. And
Exactly.
maybe this happened with you, and maybe it means like, oh, so yes, I can write these like product songs in a few hours. That's great to know that I can do that. And maybe that will allow me to write my authentic songs a little more quickly,
Yeah.
a little more efficiently, be a little less
Yeah.
precious, or allow myself to like get it out and then go back and edit instead of like trying to get everything perfect in this session.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that it definitely helped me understand that, So it was good for that reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, so songwriting thing, and then kids. And then kids. We still played some shows before kids. We even played a couple shows after kids. But then kids really happened, like I've had
Yeah.
2 kids now, and, I'm a mom, and I was working, and it was just not enough time in the day to sleep and breastfeed your child and then like learn how to wean them. And, like you're literally a parent, and definitely as a mom, I think you're just exhausted, in those
yeah.
like, especially, it's just a lot. It's a lot to
Yeah.
try and juggle so many things. So creativity went by the wayside for a good
Yeah.
amount of time.
And yeah, that's one of
always
the
felt
more
sad about
it's obviously that's kind of where we are in the story. But this is one of the things I'm most interested in talking to you about is like there's a hiatus with the narrative. Obviously having kids,
Yeah.
taking up all your time and energy. And, recently, so in 2021, you guys put out your first single since Golden
Yeah.
Silence, yeah? Monoliths.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
now you're kind of gearing up. You have a single coming out on the 14th. It's Little
Yes.
Boys. Let me get it right here. Little Boys Break Hearts.
Yes.
Um, so like what's it like? I know that we've spoken before that like you're trying to get back into it. You're like getting back into the
Yeah.
routine of writing, and like you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
breaking out of that hiatus. And now that you're like a little bit further along with kids and you have at least
Yes.
some emotional energy to of your own that to spare and a little bit more time
Yeah.
maybe, what's that like? Like now that you're on the other side of having kids, like what is the creative process
Yeah.
like for you? Like how does it feel
Totally.
now?
Ah, I was so depressed, like
Mm,
not having time to write music.
yeah,
And like I know that I can sink so deep into just doing tasks. And
yeah,
I can be like that at work too. And that's not great because then I'm not necessarily even doing helpful things. I'm just doing things, right? Like
yeah.
there's like being
Checking
busy,
boxes. Yeah,
just checking boxes. And then it's like, what did you actually do and what value did that actually add?
yeah,
And when it's like really just you talk to a lot of people, it didn't really result in anything, couldn't really even describe it. You're like, something is not adding up here in terms of how
yeah.
I'm spending my time. Now the creative, this is kind of psychotic. Brian and I started doing these like personal growth challenges during
Hmm.
COVID.
Yeah,
Everyone was
tell me
just
about them. I love
bored
these.
out of our minds, like trying to figure out how are we going to do this.
Yeah.
So we started doing these personal growth challenges where we would put 5 or 6 different things on a list, and we would commit to like a 7-week cycle of all right, this 7-week cycle, like these are the things that I want to work on. Like,
Yeah.
I want to meditate. I want to read more. I want to listen to new music more. I got out of the habit of listening to new music. I want to
Hmm.
exercise, whatever, right? And so we'd have like a mishmash of different things that we've
Yeah.
each sort of assigned personally, and then we would compete, where it was like like Hunger Games,
Yeah.
So you had to get 6 out of 7 every week in order to like miss. You're allowed to miss one activity. Each one time in a 7-day period, and
Mm.
then we would like treat ourselves. So if I won, he would take the kids for a couple hours and give me some me time, and I would do the same thing for him. And then if we both won, we would both do it, and that became challenging because we're just constantly just passing children to each other because we were really competitive for a while and we were both winning. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so during that time, I was like, the thing that I need to do is I need to add 10 minutes of creative, writing to my day or something musical, whether it's tinkering on the piano or something, and that was really what started it, because once I started it very quickly
Yeah.
became very easy to get
Isn't
back
that
into it. Just
crazy?
a little
Isn't that crazy?
consistency. Oh, it was wild. I was floored, honestly. Like
Yeah.
that I was like, I've written I've written more music, more ideas, more lyrics in like 3 months than I have in like 10 years. What
Amazing.
is that? Like then you think
Amazing.
about the time and then you go to the like, oh, woe is me, all I've wasted. And then you can't,
I
because you
know.
could
You gotta
never,
let it go,
because we can
right?
talk
It's
about how we
yeah.
don't have free will. And I know you and I are both are
No,
there.
I don't
So
wanna
we can talk about
I
that a
don't wanna
different
broach
time.
that.
um, anyways, we're definitely not going to talk about free will. But
Yeah, yeah.
regardless, yeah, like we just, it was just amazing to see how much I could do. And that really restarted things. And then the process now is that, so in order to do it, really, I had to do it first, right? Because if you are busy and you want to get something done, you got to do it first before you do everything else. And once I like
Hmm.
flip my work brain on, I can't creative. It's very hard to flip
Yeah,
back to
you mean the first like
creative.
early in the day, you gotta do it before you start working. Got it. Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah. So I started doing it. I started waking up at like 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
like 5:15, and going into my office and just sitting there and being like, whatever, 10 minutes. Boop, 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 boop. Whatever I
Same.
can
I do
think
the same
of. Cup
thing.
of
Yep.
coffee. Yeah.
Yep. Coffee helps.
Sometimes piano. Coffee. Yeah. And then, sometimes I would end up working for an hour, because the kids wouldn't wake
Yeah,
up until
exactly.
later, and you just like time stretches. So I started collecting all these different ideas, and now the process, that's basically what it was. And it's been like that for like, I guess like a year.
Wow. Wow, I didn't realize you're a year
Um,
in already. That's amazing.
yeah. I mean,
That's
you're
great.
in. This last, sometimes things get tough. You get COVID a couple times, and
Yeah.
everything goes to
Yeah.
crap for a month.
Yeah.
But it's been a year, and this like last couple weeks have been particularly tough because the kids have been waking up earlier. So I've had to try to wake up earlier. It's been really hard,
Mm.
but for the most part,
Earlier than
like
5?
it's been
Ugh.
really well. No, I mean like
Okay.
5:15 though, where you're like,
Yeah.
great, like I've
Yeah.
barely, or
Yeah, I can't do
um.
5. I don't have
So
to
it's
yet.
tough. No,
Yeah.
hang on. You might never have to. It just depends on
Yeah.
your kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the win, right? Like getting up at 5 for me and getting to work from like 5 to 6:15, 5 to 6:30, or 5:15 to 6:45 some days, that was really the thing, and it created a lot of material to work with. And then Jesse has gotten more into production over the last
Oh,
couple of
cool.
years. So what now the process is, I, at least right now, like I've been writing like a song and, putting some basic stuff in Logic, like a drum pattern or something,
Mhm.
like some, program drums and like a synth pad or something. And then just vocal and sending it to him, maybe with a little bit more, but usually pretty minimal. I'm like, here is the
Yeah.
concept. And then
Yeah.
he'll just like record a bunch of guitars, do a bunch of, just
Yeah.
layering, put vocals in, do a bunch of stuff. And then we're like kind of finessing this process where we give it to Brian. And now Brian is like, cool, like now I have like more of a fleshed out song concept. And now
Yeah.
I'm going to put my thumbprint on it and like take out some stuff or put some stuff in. And then we'll usually re-record vocals with him.
Yeah.
And, anything that just didn't come out clean enough, like we'll record
Yeah.
in his studio. And
So
that's the
is
process right now.
Little Boys Break Hearts, that's one of the songs you've written since your kind of new,
No,
methodology?
actually,
Or?
that one.
Okay.
No, the first one of that methodology will come out in 2023.
Ooh.
Reveal.
Internet broken.
Yes. Yes. Thank you to anyone that still cares. But this Little Boys Break Hearts, actually, I wrote like in like 2015. I wrote a long time ago. And
Gotcha.
then the next one, then we're going to put out another one in a month. We'll announce that in like a week or two. And that will be also, so the Monoliths was like something that Jesse wrote, and he'd had it for a little while too. And so we kind of just picked it. We're like, let's just do something. Let's figure out a way, And so we did that one during COVID. And our hope was that we would get to the next one sooner, but kids.
Yeah.
So it took a year. So we got to the next one sooner, which was Little Boys Break Hearts, but kids. Yeah. So it happened. We got Little Boys Break Hearts, and that's the one that's coming out. And then we did one more, and that one is going to be the subsequent ones. And that's going to sort of be like a collection, like 3 songs that are in this vein. You know what I mean? Like they're all
they
kind of
belong
like
together.
folky. Yeah, they belong together. They're a little folk. They're a little indie. They're a little, a little, just that genre.
Yeah.
And then we're done with that.
Oh, yeah?
It's already over. Yeah.
That's great. Oh, my God. I'm excited.
The new
So, okay,
new
well,
stuff
this is
doesn't sound anything like that.
Yeah, that's what I want to follow up with. Like, what are the plans? What are the goals moving forward now that it sounds like you've got, some songs in the tank? Sounds like you got a plan here. So what do we got?
Yeah. So I'm planning my life, and also therefore my musical aspirations in like 90-day chunks, and then like annual, like quarters, and it all follows my work stuff. My work stuff is way more organized than my music stuff is, and I'm trying to get my music stuff to be quite just to like sort of mirror how organized I am at work a little bit, with without sucking the joy out of it. Actually,
turning into products.
Exactly. My work life is actually totally awesome. And so it does not suck any joy out of my life. And that is why I am modeling my music life after the way that my work life is, because it is so fulfilling. But so I don't know exactly what the bigger plan is. I think, for me, I had set a personal goal of, like 100 pieces of written, and I had wanted to have 10 complete sort of demoed idea, full songs, like by the end of this year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for me, coming from like
No,
a song every 4 years,
yeah,
was
yeah,
a good place to go.
yeah.
But I think if, in an ideal world, we'll put together, there are probably right now maybe like 6 or so songs that like fit this new vibe. That are
Outside
like
of the folksy stuff that you're going to be like finishing
yes,
up like
exactly.
this
Yeah.
year.
So there's
Got it.
2 more. Yeah, exactly. So the 2 remaining folk songs will come out, and those 3 songs will sort of package together as an EP, as a 3-song, like, EP in that world. And then this new stuff will come out in 2023. And that stuff will be more, I think, kind of like chill indie pop kind of stuff. I feel like
Cool.
it's hard for us to do anything too high energy. It's just not who we are.
Right.
But you never know. Once in a while, we
You
come out
ramp
with
it up
something
now that
that's
your
like, wow.
parents.
Yes, exactly. There's a chance. There's actually something that I started a while ago that I haven't really gotten to work on yet, but I feel like that one might be the one that could be the outlier, like way poppier, way, sort of more higher energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of the stuff is cool. It all fits in the same world. It's got most of the process is like that. There's a couple that are actually where Jesse originated like an instrumental, and I wrote like a top line to it. So that
Cool.
stuff feels a little bit different.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's still kind of in that world. So that the goal, I think, is to release that stuff and see how it goes, right? Like try and do it in some consistent fashion, like,
Yeah.
feed the algorithm,
Feed the algorithm.
as
Yeah.
they say, feed the
yeah,
algorithm.
yeah.
But for 4 to 6 weeks apart, 6 to 8 weeks apart, whatever we can do to sort of maintain some consistency now that we've got a new process that feels like it
Yeah,
could
got a machine
work,
working. That's great. Well, I'm excited.
That's
I
the
didn't really
plan.
know. We had discussed before about these kind of folksier songs that you're putting out. That like small collection. I had no idea you have like a whole different vibe and you have way more material. Kind of almost in
Yeah.
the process of being locked and loaded. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
As a friend of yours, but as a fan of the narrative, I'm excited. That's really exciting.
It is exciting. Yeah, I'm pumped. And then
So
I'm working on other stuff too. So it's like there's a lot of because I've written so much more. It's now I'm able to be like, these songs go together here. These
yeah,
ones fit together
yeah,
there. That never always used to just be like, well, here's another one. Here's
yep,
another
exactly.
one.
That's all I got.
Here's another one.
Yep,
That's all I got.
yeah,
But
yep.
now it's like, hold on, there's a lot of stuff. So like, where should this stuff
Curate.
go?
Yeah.
What should this? Yeah, it's more curation going on, and I think that's
Yeah.
a big step up for us.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's a good place to end. For anybody that
Yeah.
has been listening to up to this point, make sure you check out Little Boys Breaks Hearts. Little Boys Break Hearts, excuse me. October 14th, It's Friday. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This is really fun. You're my guinea pig, like I said before, in terms of having conversations. But you, this was super fun, especially like I said, we're friends, but as a fan of the band, it's fun to like learn about what's going on behind the scenes and like
Sure.
you getting out of this hiatus, and it's exciting. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I didn't know you were a fan, really, so that was plus for me.
Oh, come
One
on.
more Spotify follower.
Hell yeah. I'll actually make sure I follow you.